Today, Open Source Security is talking to William Brown. I'm so excited to have William here today. So William put a tweet on Mastodon that I will link to in the show notes. And then I read it. I'm like, I should talk to this person. And then 3 other people sent me messages that were like, you need to talk to this person. So I'm talking to this person. William, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I think that your instincts and your 3 followers were all wrong, and you should not talk to me.
I mean, we'll know.
I'm a troublemaker of the highest order. So
whatever. I love troublemakers here.
More seriously, the tweet you're referencing was related to my work on WebAuthn. So in my free time, I wrote the WebAuthn library for Rust.
Nice.
I wanted to use it for another identity project I've been working on, and at the time there was no WebAuthn library for Rust. So I phoned up my mate and I said, hey, I'm going to come over for a week. Flew down to Sydney, spent a week there in his apartment and wrote the library.
Wow.
And that was a fun week, and it helped me find a lot of fun issues with the WebAuthn specification. And I reported those, and I've been a little bit involved in some of the working group stuff, not to a huge extent, mainly just commenting on issues and issues in the specification. But so I put out this tweet about the FIDO metadata service and an error that I had found in it, or the 3rd time it's errored actually in the last year.
In the last year?
In the last year.
Wow.
And I think this obviously then raises the first question, which is what is the FIDO metadata service?
Let's start with what is FIDO for anyone who doesn't know. Yeah, we'll go all the way back. Very quickly.
Fédération d'Internationale d'Authentication, spelled with an O. I actually don't know what FIDO stands for.
It doesn't matter what it stands for. Just tell us what it is.
So the FIDO Alliance is a working group from industry, so it's not open source, it's industry working group.
Yeah.
And it started with U2F. It was around how can we have different types of identity or authentication specifically, which aren't vulnerable to the same kind of attacks that we've had in the past. With things like passwords, obviously, have a whole bunch of attacks, both from quality of the password to the server side and how they're stored. And of course, password reuse, all of that fun stuff. And of course, like getting into TOTP and real-time phishing and just, phone-based stuff or SMS, all of the different issues that you see there. So FIDO has put in a bunch of work, and I believe that they started with the U2F standard, or Universal Second Factor is what that was called. And then as that grew, the U2F standard started with CTAP 1, or the client to Authenticated Protocol 1, which is the U2F devices. And then that's evolved now to become CTAP 2 and 2.1. And that covers things like what you would know today as YubiKeys or security keys.
Yep.
And so FIDO is the industry working group who defines the CTAP specification. And out of that, the W3C defined the WebAuthn specification. So there's 2 parts to this. You've got FIDO, which defines CTAP and some other bits, and then you've got W3C, which defines WebAuthn, which is the browser parts. So you've got these 2 different entities that you kind of got to be a part of, and they both are related heavily, but not quite. So, but they both have to coexist. So that's who FIDO is. They are that industry body.
It's so easy to understand. I don't see why everyone doesn't know.
Well,
it's very complicated. That's the thing
is I spend a lot of time doing this, so this is what I understand. I'm sure that if I spent as much time, performing surgery on animals like my partner does, then I would know how to do that too, but I do not. So I just look at my pets and just go, wow, you're a fluffy ball of terror, and I have no idea how to fix you. So I'm just as impressed with her as she is with me. So, I can understand why people don't know all this stuff. It is one of those things where you've got to be involved to really follow it. So
For sure.
And that's my job, is to follow these things and distill it into bite-sized nuggets of comedy that I get to share with you today on this podcast.
I love it. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we'll pretend that we all understand FIDO now. So
there we go.
What is this metadata service you're speaking of?
Okay, so the metadata service is FIDO publishes effectively what you could call like a certificate transparency list. And what that is it's a trusted registry of authenticators. Now, authenticators here refers to the cryptographic hardware device, such as a YubiKey or a TPM or the secure enclave in a phone. It's referring to that cryptographic device. And it's a descriptor of the trust status of that device, the certificate or authorities that define who controls that device and its attestation certificates, which we'll touch on in a bit more, and as well information about how the device operates and what it can and cannot do. So the question then becomes is, well, okay, that's really cool, but why does the MDS matter? What is important about the MDS and why do we care about its existence? Why do we need to have a list of trusted authenticators? So this is where we need to start to talk about how WebAuthn works a little bit. So obviously we went from U2F, which was, as I mentioned, the start of FIDO.
Yeah.
And we've gone now into CTAP2 and WebAuthn. And the thing is that U2F was a cryptographic device that was parallel to your password. So you've still got two factors. They're separate, but they're still two factors. Now, WebAuthn and CTAP2 started to shift this. Suddenly, we now have a self-contained multi-factor device. So what this means is that when you're using, say, what is now more commonly known as a passkey, which has 5 different definitions of what a passkey is, by the way. Ask me how I know. I've seen all 5. They're all different, and they all have different pros and cons to which definition you choose to follow. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to call them that. You go to a website, use a passkey, and it pops up and says, okay, touch your key, and then you're prompted to enter your key's PIN, or maybe you've got a fingerprint. What's happening there is that the device is actually, with its private key, signing an assertion that says, with a Boolean flag, yes, a single bit that says, did I validate this person's PIN? Yes, no. Okay, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what this means is that that signature over that assertion, when returned to the website and the web server, it has to validate that. And now we have to trust that Boolean flag, that it was set properly. So we've now moved from I'm validating the password and this cryptographic signature to I'm validating this signature and this single Boolean flag was set correctly and in a trustworthy state. We're putting a lot of faith in these devices to handle these signatures correctly, you know, and of course, this comes with a lot of responsibility for those device manufacturers. But then even say like a password manager, you know, for example, something like WebAuthn. Now, I don't have any problems with WebAuthn. I use WebAuthn, it's great. But the passkeys it implements, when it flashes up the extension and says, oh, do you want to continue logging in? And you press the continue button, it's lying to the website at the other end because it sets the UV flag to true, but it's never asking you for your WebAuthn master password again. So the site at the other side sees, yes, this person entered their user validation, but they did not. They were actually just sitting at my laptop and click continue. So that's an example where, because we're putting so much faith in these authenticators, we end up with this spectrum of trust where for the majority of people, realistically, cryptographic authentication is awesome. Like WebAuthn and what they've done with their passkey storage, that's fine. I have no problem with that. When I log into my super awesome fun.ru website, you know, my favorite backdoor, you know, security forums, obviously hosted on a .ru domain for the best intel.
Of course.
I don't care if that's stored in my WebAuthn and I just click continue because that's a throwaway. But when there's things that I really do care about, you know, where I really want to make sure that someone sitting at my laptop wouldn't be able to, you know, impersonate me, that's when I need a device such as my YubiKey. So hopefully you can already start to see where the problem is here.
I kind of suspected this is how this all worked. I didn't have any proof until now.
There you go. There's your proof.
Yeah.
Well, so let's say that you're hosting a web service for a bank. What are your first thoughts on where this can go wrong?
I mean, so my views on banking differs from almost everyone else.
Fine, but I meant like some high security site where you've got like a different trust gradients of
I mean, look, how we verify who people are is shockingly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I know it feels like it should be easy, like username, password, maybe a YubiKey, maybe a pass key, maybe. I know everyone uses SMS. My freaking bank uses SMS, which ticks me off, but whatever. Like, you know, or my other favorite now, I get is the magic.
I have to say, I always forget, coming from Australia, that the US is like a decade behind us in banking technology.
Oh, I know.
I always forget. Like, I remember this is completely off topic, but I remember all my American friends being like, yeah, we finally got chip. We can put the chip in. And I'm sitting there going, we've had PayWave in Australia for like a decade.
That's right. Yep. It was embarrassing.
Anyway,
it was embarrassing.
We have like instant. I can transfer money from my account to my partners on a different bank, and it's instantaneous.
That's like a week here. So
we don't even need a third-party app. No money, no Venmo, no none of that. Just my bank to hers, instant. Anyway. Where I was trying to lead you with this is that because we're putting all this trust in these authenticators, when we're the one hosting this authentication service, we might want to have different requirements on what kind of authenticators are used. We want to say, hey, here's our bank branch manager. We don't want them just storing their passkeys in Bitwarden. We want to guarantee that they're storing it in a YubiKey. And we want to know that that YubiKey is trustworthy, for example. So the thing is that as a web service or as a website, the question is, how do you do this? How can we actually enforce what authenticators are used? And the thing is, there is an answer to this. And that answer is attestation. So what attestation is when I am enrolling my authenticator for the first time. So unlike, say, a smart card, which obviously is provisioned and then sent to you, YubiKey, security keys, WebAuthn, all of that is a trust on first use scheme, or TOFU as the much cuter name. So because it's TOFU, I need to go through an enrollment process where I submit the public key of my credential and a statement that says, this is the authenticator, here's its capabilities, and it is signed off by an attestation private key within the device. So at manufacture, Yubico has put a per device attestation key into my device. And when I register, that private attestation key can sign that registration and then submit that to the authentication server, which at the other end, the authentication server can then go, cool, here's your public key. It is signed by this attestation key, or this attestation certificate, sorry. And there's now a trust chain back to Yubico's attestation CA. And that allows us to say, hey, here is the set of attestation CAs that we trust and that we want to use. This is where the FIDO MDS becomes so important, because the MDS is the list of active attestation CAs and what devices they are actually administering over. So this is important because you need to check both what the device itself is proposing it is and that the CA matches with that as well. So for example, if I was to compromise a key and steal its attestation key, I wouldn't then want to be able to forge being a YubiKey or something else, for example. So there's a bunch of things you need to check. So the MDS is FIDO's list of, here are the devices that we've tested, asserted, here's all the CAs. So what happened to me, so I look like you're about to say something.
No, okay. Let me just maybe rehash some of this to make sure I understand, and I'm going to try to maybe make it more simple. So you're saying that in this is all, well, it's not in theory. This is real because you have an actual list. So you have every device manufacturer, be it YubiKey or what? Like, let's say I'll pick on Google and Yubico are the only two I know.
Yep, Google Titan. So Google. So for anyone who's listening to this and wants key recommendations, by the way, YubiKeys, Phaeton make really good keys, and Token 2, a subset of their keys, are really good. Those are probably the three best manufacturers today, but Yubico is still the gold standard. They are just like a level above every other manufacturer for what they offer and the security guarantees they offer.
Oh, nice. I have a ton of YubiKeys and I love them. I didn't realize they were the best. They just seemed very nice.
They absolutely are.
That's
awesome. This is one of my bags of keys. I have like a whole bunch of manufacturer keys. I've got some extras in this container. Me and another guy here in Australia, we've actually bought a lot of keys and tested them ourselves to validate what they're offering.
Cool.
So,
so you're saying that all of these device manufacturers have a CA that is known to the metadata service, and then that CA has basically signed every single device that leaves their factory.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
and that signature is how then you, on the other end, verifies that, yes, this is a YubiKey device. This is not something pretending to be a YubiKey device.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Now, there's very few web services or authentication providers who actually implement this attestation flow.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure I would be interested to put money on this and see if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we and the Cunny project were the first in the world to ever do it.
Wow.
And I suspect this because we found so many issues with the FIDO MDS at the time.
Yes, I believe that.
So where this is really important is, again, it's back to that. Not all security keys are made equal. There is one.
Okay, can I interrupt and ask one question?
Yeah,
you were talking about Bitwarden a little while ago.
Yeah.
So when you have one of these software-based, U2F, whatever we're going to call it, authenticators, does that mean they just don't have attestation? Or are they lying about their attestation, or what are they doing?
It depends on the provider. Generally, a software provider does not provide attestation, and that itself is a signal to say, okay, this obviously it's not backed by anything, so we can't proceed. Some I would suspect that in the future, something like Bitwarden may be able to do attestation where it's online, where as you're enrolling, your Bitwarden client goes back to the main Bitwarden server, which signs the attestation with its private keys and then comes back. And then you can say, hey, okay, this is my Bitwarden account hosted at Josh's awesome, Bitwarden vault, and then that way you can say, okay, well, at the very least, now I know, look, it's a software authenticator, but it is hosted within our environment of Bitwarden. So again, you're still establishing that chain of where the credentials are and where they're stored. And of course, you've now got this spectrum of okay, it's still a software authenticator, but it's in our corporate or privately controlled Bitwarden. So we're going to give it this trust rating, but we're still going to put YubiKeys above that, for example, because there's still a bit of an, a risk with that. So,
oh my goodness. I knew this was going to be complicated. This conversation is 100 times more complicated than I expected.
So I'm trying to keep it simple. So the thing is that realistically, we've got this trust spectrum, right? We've got a number of keys, so the thing is that when you're buying these keys, right, and you're rolling them out, let's say we want attestation to validate, okay, these keys are trustworthy. Well, the thing is, not every key when you get it is built the same. So for example, Nitro Key, when they send you a key, they actually send it. This is the official bag that it got sent to me in, and it's a snaplock bag. So, that's not very tamper-proof.
Yeah, right.
So I can just open the bag, right? And then let me just dump this out. So here's my Nitro Key 3, for example, and I can just pop it open like that.
Ah, very nice.
And there's no tamper evidence at all. So for example, and you compare this to say a YubiKey, and the YubiKey comes in tamper-proof packaging.
Yeah, right.
And the device at the end of the day is sealed. There's no way to open this. In fact, I believe if you open it, you can risk destroying the actual security chip on the inside. To open them up, you've actually got to drill it, and obviously that leaves some pretty obvious evidence.
You can dissolve it with acid, I think I saw once.
I still feel like that's going to leave some evidence.
You might know, right?
Whereas, if I get a Nitro Key in transit, I've got no way to know if this has been taken apart and reassembled.
Right. For sure.
And to make this worse is that not all keys actually store, it's not a FIDO requirement to store the private key in the secure enclave. So, which is crazy, I know, but it's not a FIDO requirement. So this Nitro Key on their own website says it does not use its own secure enclave. It has one. It puts it on all its marketing that it has a CC-EAL6+ secure enclave on here. It does not use it for WebAuthn.
What do they put in it then?
Just the unencrypted flash on the device. Well, it might be encrypted, but this is only protected by the LPC or the NXP Secure Boot scheme, which has definitely not had vulnerabilities in the past.
Yeah,
so let's not, anyway. So as you can see, there's like this spectrum of trust that we want to establish. So not all keys are made the same. So as a vendor, we're relying on FIDO to publish this list of keys that they've attested to various security qualities. Now, they do have different levels within the MDS, blah, blah, blah. Not everyone has the time and capability to assess keys like I have done. Not everyone has that set of skills. That's fine. Not everyone should have to have that set of skills. We have to be able to put our trust in an organization like FIDO to do it for us. So this is where it becomes a problem. FIDO keeps changing the layout of that specification without updating the actual data sheet. So they have a specification for the MDS that says, here is exactly what fields can and cannot appear and what data will be in that list that they publish, but they keep changing it without updating that spec. And the way that we wrote our parser, we wrote it very strictly to say, hey, if there's something new or unforeseen, we're going to error. Because if we can't interpret that, that might be some security critical piece of information that we need to be able to interpret so that someone can make an informed decision. And so within the last year, FIDO have updated the MDS and broken it 3 times by adding new fields and new data without any documentation as to what the field means. And in some cases, just adding, like one was pretty boring. It was just adding a new transport type. So like transport being like USB, NFC, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
You know, that's what transport is. That's not so bad, but there was one where they added a whole bunch of extra assertions around how biometrics worked, and there's no documentation as to what those field means. So how is someone meant to trust the biometrics? But where this gets even worse is the FIDO metadata service. I've just run the parser here, and because I have written a parser that follows the specification as close as possible, I am seeing at least 40 errors which are in violation of their own specification. Things such as device, I had to patch a device for invalid code accuracy descriptor on user presence. Authenticated get info was not collected from a real device. It was actually falsified. Some devices are missing information. We have a number where certificate authorities, the certificate authority is not formatted correctly, and so it can never actually be used if you parse the MDS. There was a really good example of that once where the fastest way to get that one fixed was I found the email of the CEO of the key manufacturer and emailed them and said, hi, your key has now appeared in FIDO. By the way, you know that FIDO botched this? And then they somehow managed to get it fixed. So you might think at this point, wow, I'm being really rude to FIDO here. Honestly, look, I want to fix this. And here's the kicker. FIDO is an industry body. If I want, I'm not allowed to access the issue trackers. I'm not allowed to participate at all. I do this in my free time. You know, I do have a full-time job which is authentication related, but this is not my full-time job. This is what I do on the side, you know, as part of my open source work. I do not have a free, last I checked, I could be wrong about this number. Last I checked, 10,000 USD a year for a membership to FIDO, just so I can report these issues.
That's wild.
I have reported these issues to the head of FIDO certification, and I have contacted them about all of this. This has been known for more than 2 years at this point, and it's still not fixed. And that's really disappointing to me because I would love to see this stuff fixed. I want to help get this fixed, but I can't. I'm not allowed to sit at the table. I'm not allowed to report the issues. And it makes it really hard for a vendor who wants to actually start to really put their trust in these keys to say, hey, what keys do we trust if the metadata around them is either inaccurate, broken, or, you know, keys are being added to this list that aren't even storing, you know, credentials in a secure enclave. Like, how are we meant to establish trust in FIDO as the authority when they can't publish a trusted or database that follows their own specification? And they haven't updated the spec since 2023.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I went looking the other day in advance of this conversation here, I went looking to see when they last updated. It was 2023. And that's the thing is, I think there needs to be, like, I could suggest all the fixes in the world. Like, there definitely needs to be more communication from FIDO around when these changes are coming, so that people like myself who publish tools for FIDO MDS parsing can update to make sure that users are always getting the latest and greatest. But it's, like I said, I don't have a seat at the table, so I can't do anything. So
I'm familiar with this problem. It's very frustrating. These industry groups cost a ton of freaking money. And my favorite part, the thing I absolutely love, is you're not not FIDO, but similarly, people working on open source libraries that use something an industry group creates. I've seen more often than not that people working on the open source know more about the standard than the experts, will put that in scare
quote. I'm not going to say that I know more about this than some of the people in that working group. Like, there are some bloody smart people who are working as part of FIDO. Yeah. Like, there are some of the Yubico guys are fantastic. Really appreciate them. But I just wish that I could give this feedback. That's all. Like, when we implemented NFC. So so we've also written a library for interacting with authenticators on different OSs. So like a CTAP library. And this is how I got my other mate into it. He's very interested in NFC. And so one day I bought him an NFC YubiKey as like and gave it to him. And he's like, "Oh, you son of a," and I was like, "Yeah, got you now, didn't I?" Awesome. And he went on from there and wrote like a bunch of really cool stuff. He's a lovely guy. But he found issues with the NFC implementation as it's written in CTAP. We can't feed that back.
Yeah,
that's terrible. The CTAP and we can't feed that back. We've tried. And the thing is, what we've been told is, just go to the FIDO dev mail list. And you know what? I may as well just print out my complaints and feed them to my paper shredder instead, because it'll be a better use of my time than that FIDO dev list. It is not worth it. And so and I would love to see this fixed, but at the moment, that's the thing is, if you're looking to deploy passkeys or security keys at scale, you have to be able to do attestation, because you need to be able to exclude insecure keys from your environment, and not many IDPs can do attestation in the first place. But second, when you do, you still have to be validating these keys yourself, because you can't guarantee that what's being published is accurate or up to date in a lot of cases, or that you'll be able to validate that in the future. So if you are looking to deploy keys, seriously, like YubiKey, Phasian, Token 2 are probably the best three security wise. It's just, it's good fun. I assure you though, this is not what keeps me up at night though. I know far worse things about other specifications. Ask me about Kerberos sometime.
Oh, Kerberos. Oh my goodness. I know enough about Kerberos to stay away from Kerberos.
I went on a bender with a colleague at my workplace and wrote a Kerberos library in Rust.
Oh my goodness. Let it die.
Was fun. We can't. Unfortunately, there's one set of protocols and one OS that baked it in so deeply we can't get rid of it.
That's true. Windows will keep Kerberos alive forever. And it's funny because I remember when they chose Kerberos as the underlying infrastructure of Active Directory, we're like, oh yeah, they're finally picking something that doesn't suck. And now it's like, what have you done?
Hindsight is a hell of a drug.
Yep. You gotta love it. Okay. Yeah. This is so much to parse, William.
I'm so sorry. I dumped it all on you as quick as I could.
This is amazing. It is such a dense, interesting, amazing conversation. I had no idea that the FIDO keys had anything like all the attestation and the signing and how the hardware worked. So this has been amazing. I would love to ask you follow-up questions, but I can't even think of any right now just because I feel like I've been overloaded with all this new information. In a good way, though, in a good way.
I'm happy to come back sometime. So if you have follow-up questions, email or I'm happy to come back and chat some more. No problem.
Sure.
I will talk your ears off. My partner, we play a fun game, which is I'll talk her ear off about some tech stuff. And every time I say an acronym, she'll come up with what she thinks the acronym means. And she's very smart, but she's a veterinarian. And so her idea of what those acronyms are tends to be about animals.
Excellent.
I think TPM was Turtle Protection Management or something like that.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's so good. I love that.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm in a similar position where, yes,
Yeah.
my partner is, I'll tell her things. She's like, whatever. I don't think
Yeah.
she listens anymore, but anyway, okay.
Nah.
Okay, William, I'm going to end this one right now because I think this has been a lot, but yes, you will definitely come back. You will definitely talk about some more of this stuff because this is vastly more fascinating and difficult than I had expected, which
Happy
is a
to.
delight. So
I'm happy to chat about this more anytime.
absolutely. 100%. William, I want to thank you so much. This has been just amazing.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.